Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Chris Richardson. I'm the President and General Counsel for BDV Solutions. I've been with BDV for about 6 years now, and we've seen all sorts of different changes and different recommendations for changes. But the reason I'm coming to you today is because of a specific news story that came out in the light of the tragic shooting that occurred in Washington, D.C. Last week. For those that aren't aware, two National Guardsmen were shot in Washington, D.C. They were both shot by an Afghan national, someone who came over presumably on an SIV visa several years ago. And during Thanksgiving, the president said that he was going to implement a travel ban against all third world countries. And so that's obviously set off a lot of concern among both our clients and prospective clients. What does that mean? So the first thing I would say is that, one, we don't actually know what it means, right? Like the president often makes a lot of statements, and those statements are then turned into policy. But oftentimes, the statements that he makes aren't necessarily the policy that we think would come out of it. And so more likely than not, what we're going to see is there's already a travel ban against, to varying degrees, against 19 countries. I'm assuming that's just going to expand. And instead of 19 countries, it'll be 30 countries that will be impacted. Which of those countries will be impacted? It's really hard to know. More likely, there will be more African countries, maybe a few more Asian countries. But my guess is that it's going to be a lot of Caribbean and African countries that will be mostly impacted by this. Afghans are already impacted by the travel bans. And these travel bans, not all of them are necessarily the same. And I'm sure that some of them will change with time as well, right? And so today there's a travel ban against X country, but in a year or two, or maybe even less, situations change. There might be a different travel ban against other countries, or there might be some countries added and some countries subtracted. And so I think that people, especially when you're looking at immigration and applying in immigration, you always have to think about the long term of it, right? So none of these travel bans are permanent travel bans. They might continue on for a year. They might be on for 2 years. They might be on for the full of President Trump's term. But it's unlikely that, these travel bans are going to go on forever and a day. Two, even if there is a travel ban, more likely than not, maybe not the first year, but certainly there will be exceptions to those rules. During the last Trump administration, when we went through that as well, we saw that initially the bans were hard-nosed, but then they gradually became like, well, what are our exceptions? And so even with these travel bans, I expect to see that there will be exceptions, irrespective of the 30 plus countries that will probably be impacted when the president and his team come together to decide which countries are going to be impacted. And so what we'll do at BDV is, obviously, we're going to continue working with the government relations team. We will monitor the news and look for signs of what those countries might be that will be added. But ultimately, we will be pushing, and others will be pushing, for waivers, exceptions, and finding different ways to find waivers and exceptions for individuals. But, for now, I think we can expect that there will be an additional list of countries that will be added. We, of course, will reach out to our clients that are impacted, or even prospective clients, and we'll talk about what those changes are, if there's any exemptions or exceptions to them, if any, and then also just continue working on our end to educate both the public and our government officials on the impact that these things have on the immigration processes. And so that's something we've always worked on. That's something we'll continue to work on. None of us really know what additional countries will be added onto it. Things that have already been impacted, like asylum. There's been a pause on asylum cases. I think we'll continue seeing that happen. I think that we'll see other types of things happen as well. But for now, I think that we all just have to wait and we're going to see. But when we get more news about what the actual provisions are of the regulations, we'll definitely educate you all on them and ways to navigate them, if any. So a couple questions here. One of them is about the Dignity Act. Unfortunately, in this political environment, and I've said it before, it's going to be really, really hard to get any kind of immigration bill passed. I think that right now, especially in light of the shooting, there isn't much appetite in Congress on either side for any kind of comprehensive immigration bill. Now, there are things that are bubbling up that are surprising. The idea that, for the student visas, for example, that they could potentially remove that you have to return to your home country as part of the student visa. I thought that was interesting. And there are some interesting things being mentioned, including the gold card, which is an interesting perspective, like paying $1 million to the Commerce or Treasury Department and getting a bump in EB2 NIW or EB1A is really, really interesting. I do think that there are some, or even like with the South Koreans, I'm sure you all remember that Hyundai plant, or that plant that got raided in Georgia. The president apologized to those guys that were sent back home, and they've been encouraged to return to the country. And so I do think that despite the environment, there is a desire to have a balance between being both really hard on a lot of these immigration, but also understanding the reality of immigration too. And the reality is that our country needs immigrants. We need workers. We need people across the board in our country. And it also something that makes our country stronger. And that's something that's not from Chris Richardson, that's from President Trump himself, who said that on multiple occasions. And so I think that there will always be a balancing between the two. But, when tweets come out, I know that it understandably makes everybody a little bit jittery, but I always say we have to wait to see what the policy is on the tweets before we say that the tweets are solid gold, right? There were tweets on banning all Muslim countries, but that obviously didn't come anywhere near to being the case. And so I think that that's what we have to be thinking about. Some clients are asking about the, Bangladesh and the wait times there. As we've mentioned before, even if you are current, in some countries like Bangladesh and Nepal, they still have an even larger backlog. And so they have like a visa bulletin almost within the visa bulletin for Bangladesh and Nepal. And the thing that we can do on our end is help to try to push that, get the employer maybe to contribute to help push that. But, I think that that's just a function of the backlog and the backlogs. We are going to try to go visit Bangladesh, maybe visit the embassy as well. We've done that before, and maybe we can get some of our cases moving by doing that. But there is a pretty significant backlog right now for Bangladesh. And in terms of, what countries I expect to be on the list, I have no idea. I'm not. Someone asked if Pakistan. If you're asking about whether Pakistan will be on the list, it's really hard to imagine Pakistan being on the list. I guess anything is possible, but given America's strong military ties to Pakistan and that our intelligence works with the Pakistani intelligence significantly, I have a hard time believing that Pakistan would be on the list, but anything's possible in this. I think it's probably going to be countries where we don't have as many ties, and it's just going to be easier to add them to the list politically. That's just the honest assessment. Let's see. There's an article from Cato saying Consul refuses 60-70%. Yeah, I saw that article, and I wish I could get David Baer on here. He's the guy at Cato who usually writes this stuff. That 60-70% refusal rate is more related to 221G as well. I think that's what David had said, is that it's not just a blanket refusal. It's also related to that but one, I should explain that consular actually doesn't have the power to deny a visa. I think a lot of people think that if you have a consular case that the consular officers have that power. No. The only thing a consular officer can do or the embassy can do is send the case back to USCIS, and then USCIS will send the case back. The thing is like in the process of sending the case back, it's considered a refusal, a denial of the case, even though it's not officially technically 100% denied. In fact, we've seen some cases that were sent back to consular to USCIS that were promptly sent back from DHS. The vast majority of cases, in fact, are sent back for reaffirmation to consular affairs. And so because of that, there really isn't like a full 60, 70% that are quote unquote denied. But admin processing can be for anything, right? So if you forget to bring all the documents, if you forget to bring your passport or whatever it is that you forgot, that results in a refusal, technical refusal according to those numbers. And so, 60, 70% of EB3 unskilled definitely aren't denied. We have not seen that on our end, but we do see that initially because the consular officers don't necessarily know what EB3 is. They sometimes will put it in administrative processing until they find out more. One thing to say also about the travel bans, because someone just brought up a really good point. What happens to my case if I'm already in the process and this travel ban happens? You could still apply for the green card, right? Like they're not going to tell you that you cannot file for EB3 or EB2 or EB1. What they'll say is that at the end of the process, right, that they will put your case on hold until the travel ban potentially goes away. And so that's what happened during the last Trump administration. We had people who nevertheless still applied from the impacted countries. And then when the Trump administration changed and the travel bans got lifted, those people were immediately available for getting their visas issued. And so in that case, I do think that people who are hesitant should remember that you can still apply for the visa. It's only that at the end of the process. And if your visa is already taking, 2, 3, 4 years, a lot can change in that 3, 4 years, right? And so by the time you get to the end of that process, it doesn't stop you from getting the visa bulletin. It doesn't stop you from proceeding. It only stops you at the end of the process. And so you can have a approved I-140 and continue that way as well. Let's see. Do the asylum cases have any impact on EB3 process? The asylum cases only impact EB3 really, well, yes and no. During the last years of the Biden administration, it had a huge impact because a lot of officers were being pulled from doing EB3 or EB2 and made to do asylum cases. There aren't that many asylum cases anymore, period. The government just isn't doing them. And so the less officers that work on asylum, the more officers you're going to see them working on EB2, EB3, and the employment-based cases. And so, yeah, I think that's the separation there is that, asylum doesn't impact us to that extent. The only real impact in my mind is the fee that the EB3 has to pay for the I-140, the asylum fee, even though people aren't filing for asylum. Let's see. Someone asked about illegal work while processing your EB3. You definitely should not be working illegally while you're processing your EB3. There are lots of different rules on that, and I encourage you to reach out to our attorneys at BDV to find out, more about that. But you definitely should not be working in that way. Okay, and someone is asking about the President Trump and the travel ban in Bangladesh. Like I said earlier, I have no idea what if Bangladesh or Nepal will be on the list. But one, even if they are on the list, you can still continue with the process. You can still apply for the process. That's an important point. It won't be until the end of the process that your case might potentially be put in abatement or paused until the travel ban is lifted. And there also might be a process where you could potentially get a waiver, but we just don't know that as of yet. any movement on increasing the annual number of available green cards. The question is about if I think that there'll be any increase in the number of green cards. The Dignity Act would probably be the best way, but right now there's no appetite in Washington, D.C. to do any kind of immigration reform. There's no appetite really right now to do that. And so I think that that's the big challenge that we're seeing. Maybe next year, maybe the year after that, but I think that a lot of the appetite for reform just isn't there among Democrats or Republicans at this time. Now, 2027, maybe 2026, who knows? But as of right now, I could say that that's not. But that doesn't mean that that'll always be the case. Do I think that someone asked about if I think that the cases will be current soon. The reason why the cases were current was because of COVID, really. COVID was what really halted a lot of the cases from even being filed. And God forbid, we'd have to go through something like COVID for cases to become current again. And so I think the visa bulletin, it is what it is. I don't think it's going to get worse. I think it'll get slightly better, but I think that there's just a lot of stuff in the pipeline that has to be worked through before we see like significant movement on the visa bulletin. Let's see. Can you change from EB3 unskilled to skilled? Yes, you can, but you'll need to reach out to us directly to talk to an attorney about that. I'm not going to give advice on a Facebook Live about how to do like legal processes, but especially because every case is different, right? But there is a way to do that. Or what a lot of people do is they just file two. That's also a possibility as well. So yeah, just to clarify, there is no third world ban right now. We don't know what that even means. That was just a tweet from the president that will become a policy, but it's not a policy as of yet. Same with the gold card. I got tons of questions about the gold card when President Trump announced it. It was not even a policy at that time. It's slowly becoming a policy, and it's still not even a policy as of today. And so I think that right now we're going to wait and see what happens on the travel bans, which countries are impacted, but also like even if some countries are added to the list, remember like with Haiti, President Trump tried to get rid of Haiti off of TPS. He couldn't necessarily do it. Every time that there's a policy put in place, there's definitely going to be a legal challenge to it. And those legal challenges generally block, bar, change, alter, delay a lot of the changes that any president wants to make, right? And so even had it been President Biden and he wanted to give everyone green cards, there would have been lawsuits to challenge that. And so I think that we're going to see lawsuits irrespective of what policy comes out, even though the travel bans were upheld in Trump v. Hawaii. There was something that you could tie to that. Do I think that all countries are going to be banned? Short of COVID, no. I don't think the president even has the power to do that. And I think the Supreme Court would not let him do something like that. But he probably could pick and choose which countries he wants added. But even then, I expect there to be lots of challenges to that. And even then, it's not like they're going to stop you from doing the process. They can just stop you up until the end. But they can't stop you from applying. They can't stop you from getting in line so that when that travel ban is lifted, your case will be right there and ready to be issued. Alrighty. The Philippines visa bulletin. The best way to reach us if you're a client or even prospective client, is to go on our website, sign up, send us messages that way. Obviously, you can always get us. There are going to be people looking at our Facebook who will reach out to you as well. That's the best way to reach out to us, is just to go on our website, create an account, and then you can send us messages. But thank you everybody for your time. We're always available for any kind of outreach. Again, I know that there's a lot of stuff going on right now. a lot of fear, a lot of concern about what this travel ban is and will be. We just don't know. But when we do know, I'll be right back here. I'll explain to you what the regs are. I'll explain to you what they mean. And we will work together as we always have since the last Trump administration and the Biden administration and now the new Trump administration on how to navigate that. But thanks everybody for your time. Please be on the lookout for any messages from our team that respond to some of these messages. And if you want to reach out to us, please visit our website, www.bdv.com, bdvsolutions.com. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.